1A booster rocket stands fully fueled, ready to launch just over 16 minutes from now to send an unpiloted Progress resupply ship, a Russian resupply cargo craft, to the International Space Station on a fast-track 2-orbit, 3-hour express delivery run to send more than 3.5 tons of food, fuel, and supplies to the crew members on board the International Space Station. The flight, as it always is for a Progress or a Soyuz vehicle, will be controlled after the Progress reaches its preliminary orbit by flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov on the outskirts of Moscow. The flight control team has been on console throughout the course of the morning hours, monitoring all of the preparations at the launch site in the Central Asian desert. Here in Mission Control in Houston in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers has been on console throughout the overnight hours, led by Flight Director Greg Whitney. He and his team of flight controllers working in tandem with the Russian flight control team down in Baikonur and outside of Moscow. Whitney in the dark sweater, joined on console in the burnt orange shirt by spacecraft communicator Travis Fitzgerald, who is talking to the crew on board the International Space Station. At the bottom of your screen is Flight Director Rick Henfling, who will be the flight director for the docking phase of the Progress's automated approach and link up to the Pirs docking compartment later this morning after its 2-orbit trek to the International Outpost. It's a beautiful day down in Baikonur, mostly sunny skies, temperatures about 56 degrees Fahrenheit. The Soyuz 2.1A booster was fully fueled several hours ago. All of the propellants being replenished at this hour as we are in the final minutes of the countdown that will lead to a launch at 6:01 and 34 seconds a.m. Central Time, 4:01 and 34 seconds p.m. at the launch site in Baikonur. The Progress is carrying 3,375 pounds of propellant to the station, 104 pounds of oxygen and air, 926 pounds of water, and 3,117 pounds of spare parts and other supplies for the crew on board the International Space Station, including some of the components that will be used next Monday during the next spacewalk to be taken by the Expedition 59 crew members, David St. Jacques and Anne McLean, to set up some structural support trunnion devices on the outside of the Columbus module of the International Space Station. That's all loaded in this unpiloted Progress craft. At the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying over southwestern Kazakhstan, 316 miles behind the Progress as it begins its climb off the launch pad. 38 seconds after Progress, the space station will pass directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome, leapfrog past the Progress en route to being in a position in front of the Progress, where at the 8-minute 46-second mark after launch, when the Progress is released from the 3rd stage of the Soyuz 2.1A booster and moves into its preliminary orbit, the ISS will be 1,049 miles ahead of the Progress vehicle as the Progress begins a series of pre-programmed engine firings to increase its altitude and fine-tune its path to the International Space Station for the automated docking to the Pirs docking compartment that is scheduled at 9:25 a.m. Central Time this morning. This is the second 2-orbit rendezvous that the Russian flight control team will be executing. The first coming last July with the 70 Progress vehicle. The trajectory of this particular flight results in a very narrow phase angle at launch. That's the corridor. The way orbital mechanics works, the launch time for any vehicle to reach the International Space Station is selected at the moment that the Earth's rotation carries the launch site into the plane or corridor of the orbit of the International Space Station, which is inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. In this case, to reach the space station in just 2 orbits, the launch will occur with a narrow phase angle at about 2.4 degrees, and at orbital insertion, 8 minutes and 46 seconds after launch, that phase angle will have expanded, but still narrow at 14.4 degrees. Think of it as driving your car on an on-ramp to a freeway and hitting the correct lane with just seconds to spare so that you're in the right direction of travel. That's the way the phase angle and the launch time are calculated to bring the Progress to a 2-orbit, 3-hour rendezvous and a link up to the International Space Station for an expedited delivery of its 3.7 tons of cargo. We're about 10 minutes, 45 seconds away from launch. All of the preparations have gone very smoothly. Earlier this week, on Monday, the Progress was transported to the launch pad from its processing hangar just about a quarter of a mile away at Site 31. The familiar railroad car hauling the Progress vehicle and then hydraulically lifting the vehicle to its vertical position on the launch pad. This all occurring this past Monday at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. On board the International Space Station, the Expedition 59 crew busy with a variety of activities. They'll take a few moments out to watch the launch that is being uplinked to them by flight controllers here in Mission Control in Houston. From left to right, Canadian Space Agency astronaut David St. Jacques, NASA's Anne McClain, the commander of Expedition 59 from Roscosmos, cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko. Next to him, Alexei Ovchinin, and then on the right, NASA astronauts Nick Hague and Christina Cook. Earlier this morning, St. Jacques and McClain were in the Quest airlock of the International Space Station as St. Jacques went through a verification fit of the spacesuit that he will wear for the first spacewalk of his career this coming Monday, the third in the current series of spacewalks to perform maintenance and upgrades to hardware on the International Space Station. But the first order of business today is the launch of the Progress vehicle. This is the first of 3 cargo ships to be launched over the next couple of weeks to deliver more than 10 tons of supplies to the International Space Station. Coming up on April 17th at the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia, Northrop Grumman's Antares rocket will be launched to send the SS Roger Chaffee, the Cygnus cargo craft, to the International Space Station for a capture and berthing on April 19th, followed shortly thereafter, about a week or so later, by the launch of the next SpaceX Dragon cargo ship to the International Space Station. So the chain of international and multinational supply craft to the International Space Station continues, with the latest series beginning less than 8.5 minutes from now with the launch of the Progress aboard the Soyuz 2.1A booster from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. At this hour, the International Space Station is flying from southwest to northeast across the Saudi Peninsula. Again, the space station will be slightly behind the Soyuz booster in the Progress as it begins its climb to orbit, with launch just under 7 minutes from now. But of course, the space station will leapfrog past the Progress during its climb to orbit. The Soyuz 2.1A booster, a 3-stage rocket. The first stage, with its liquid fuel engines and strap-on boosters, will burn for 1 minute 58 seconds before the strap-on boosters are jettisoned and the first stage separates. That'll be followed about a minute later by the jettisoning of the launch shroud that you see, that conical dark section at the very top of the Soyuz booster that envelops the Progress resupply ship. The second stage engine burns for 2 minutes and 39 seconds to continue propelling of the Progress toward its preliminary orbit. The second stage separation will occur at the 4-minute 47-second mark, followed by the ignition of the third stage engine, which will burn for an additional 4 minutes and 9 seconds until it is shut down at 8 minutes and 46 seconds after launch, followed just seconds later by the Progress's separation from the third stage and the initiation of the deployment of its solar arrays and navigational antennas. At the blockhouse in Baikonur, launch controllers reporting a purge of nitrogen for the first stage. That first stage will be pressurized at about the 2-minute 45-second mark before launch. The pressurization of the first stage fuel tanks will optimize the flow of fuel, helping the structural support of the rocket as it sits on the launch pad. Again, this is launch site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Progress ready to roll, ready to begin its two-orbit trek to the International Space Station. Just 4 minutes until launch. Coming up on the 3-minute mark until launch. The International Space Station about to fly over the Caspian Sea. There are two structural umbilicals buttressed up against the side of the Soyuz 2.18 booster. The first will retract at about the 40-second mark before launch. The second at about the 12-second mark. It is the second umbilical's retraction that will initiate the auto sequence start for engine ignition and liftoff. Coming up on the 2-minute mark until launch. Pressurization of the fuel tanks complete. The ground propellant feed about to be terminated. Everything is go for launch, coming up on the 1 minute mark. There is the retraction of the second of the two umbilicals as we stand by for main engine start. Engine start command issued. Engines up to flight speed. And liftoff. Liftoff of the 72nd Progress Resupply vehicle. Destination station 2 orbits from now. Pitch, roll, and yaw programmer in. 38 seconds into the flight, the International Space Station now flying directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome. One minute, 15 seconds into the flight. The Soyuz booster passing through maximum dynamic pressure. Everything operating nominally. Good structural parameters reported from the launch engineers in Baikonur. Roll, pitch, all nominal as we stand by for first stage separation. First stage separation is confirmed. The vehicle is stable. Second stage engine up and burning. This will be about 2 minutes and 39 seconds of second stage performance. Everything so far so good. Good roll, pitch, and yaw. Second stage engine reported to be operating normally. Everything looking good. The Soyuz booster traveling more than 5,000 miles an hour, 49 miles in altitude already, 72 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, just over 3 minutes into the flight. Shroud jettison has been confirmed. All of the vehicle parameters reported to be normal. About 1 minute, 11 seconds left in second stage performance. At the 4-minute mark, everything is reported to be operating normally. The Soyuz booster in the Progress traveling more than 7,300 miles an hour, 81 miles in altitude, 190 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Coming up on the 4.5-minute mark into the flight. Standing by now for second stage shutdown and second stage separation. Second stage separation is confirmed. Third stage engine up and running. Everything looking good at the 5-minute mark into the flight. About 3 minutes and 45 seconds of powered flight remaining. All structural parameters still nominal according to the launch engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur at the 5.5-minute mark into the flight. Third stage engine burning as advertised. The third stage of the Soyuz 2.1A and the Progress now traveling 11,000 miles an hour, 115 miles in altitude, 472 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Roll, pitch, and yaw program, all nominal. Good structural parameters being reported at the 6-minute, 15-second mark into the flight. 2.5 minutes of powered flight remaining. Six minutes, 45 seconds into the flight. Everything continuing to perform as advertised as the Progress heads toward its preliminary orbit, with the space station awaiting its arrival just over 3 hours from now. Roll, pitch, and yaw nominal. Third stage engine burning as advertised. Everything looking good. Seven and a half minutes into the flight. The Soyuz and the Progress now traveling 14,000 miles an hour, 124 miles in altitude. The trajectory flattening out. About 1 minute of powered flight remaining. Good third stage performance. Some 30 seconds of powered flight remaining. We're at the 8.5-minute mark since the Progress lifted off. Standing by for third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation. Third stage shutdown confirmed. Spacecraft separation confirmed. And the report from Mission Control in Korolyov is that the solar arrays and the navigational antennas, all of the appendages have deployed as advertised. So this was a perfect launch, right on time, a flawless ascent, uneventful, as the Progress now has reached its preliminary orbit for a 2-orbit trek to reach the International Space Station. Just to recap, liftoff occurred on time at 6:01 and 34 seconds a.m. Central Time, which was 4:01 and 34 seconds p.m. in Baikonur at the launch site. The Soyuz 2.1A booster lifted off from launch site 31 in Baikonur, climbed out to the northeast, and began its journey to catch up to the International Space Station. That will culminate with an automated docking to the Pirs docking compartment on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the outpost, coming up in about 3 hours or so at 9:25 a.m. Central Time, 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time. And with the television camera having been deployed and activated on the Progress 72 cargo ship, this first view from that camera with the engineering overlay, you'll be seeing more of these views in a couple of hours or so when we're back on the air for rendezvous and docking of the Progress to the Pirs docking compartment. But this is the first test of the telemetry stream from the Progress 72 back to the control center in Korolyov, where the Russian flight controllers now begin their work to follow the journey of the Progress 72 to reach the International Space Station. The first rendezvous burns will begin in about 28 minutes, the so-called DV1 or Delta Velocity 1 burn, using the main engine on the Progress, about a 90-second engine firing. That will raise the altitude of the Progress to match that of the International Space Station and to fine-tune its path to the International Space Station. That'll be followed around the top of the hour with the Russian flight controllers giving a go, no-go for the 2-orbit rendezvous. But so far, so good, with all of the elements on the Progress 72 in good shape, as it made a flawless trek off the launch pad in Baikonur toward its preliminary orbit, and now begins a 3-hour journey to reach the Pirs docking compartment and the delivery of more than 3.5 tons of food, fuel, and supplies. So that'll wrap up our launch coverage for Progress 72. One programming note, we'll be back on the air in 2.5 hours at 8:45 a.m. Central Time, 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time with our rendezvous and docking coverage. Docking again is scheduled at 9:25 a.m. Central, 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time. So we'll see you back here in a couple of hours. For now, we'll wrap it up. This is Mission Control Houston.